Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is persistence. We generally think of persistence as a good thing, to stick to it, put your nose to the grindstone and just keep on keeping on. But there are times when our stubborn persistence can work against us, like when we persist in certain beliefs, patterns, behaviors that are detrimental to us. So we'll get to discover discuss, investigate the dark side of persistence this morning. But before we get started, let's take a couple minutes to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and creating a brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub those hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, all that movement. And when you stop rubbing them together, feel the tickling and the tingling, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to be here with you this morning. And our topic today is, it just totally went out of my mind, persistence. Our topic today is persistence. So as we think of persistence, what we're also doing or thinking about is perpetuating, keeping something going. And I was having the thought about some of my clients who are feeling a little stuck now and then. And when we feel stuck, what's happening is that there's a condition that's persisting that we are not desiring, that we're looking for something different from the condition that we're experiencing. So what my thought is that it's the very recognition of something not changing, or the declaration that something is not changing, that supports it in persisting. So, for example, with one client, they've had an incredible struggle throughout their entire lives with anxiety, deep, profound anxiety. And they've made tremendous strides. And what I've noticed is that they don't allow themselves to recognize the changes that they've made. And instead, they're looking at the remnants of the anxiety, despite the fact that it has lessened considerably, that it is less frequent, that it is less acute. What what their focus is that they still have anxiety, and they elevate that anxiety to put more attention on it when it happens than on the freedom from it. And so one of the things that we know is that where we put our attention is where we put our energy. Where we put our attention is what we're feeding. And so if we're focused on the anxiety, or even one step removed, anxiety about the potential of anxiety, what are we doing? We are persisting in that pattern. We are reinforcing that pattern against against our desires. So we're negating the progress, and rather than experiencing that it's happening, that the anxiety is disappearing, what we're focusing on is that it's still here. So, let's say initially the cup was pretty full with anxiety, and now maybe it's half full. Rather than seeing that the progress has been made, the person is saying the glass is half full rather than half empty. In this case, we want the glass empty, right? But the pattern is to have been at the effect of anxiety for forever. So to recognize that it's releasing is a new pattern, a new habit. And it's challenging. I get it. It's challenging to allow oneself to step into a new conceptualization. It's challenging to allow oneself to reinvent oneself, to see oneself in a new way. And the persistence, good morning, Jenny, welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about persistence and how our persistence, usually we consider it to be a positive thing. But the thing is that we also have this stubborn persistence about our habits and our patterns. And it can often be to our great detriment to have such a deep persistence in our ways of being. So I was just looking at when we're trying to create change, and we don't, if we, what it comes down to is me thinking that there's an importance to recognizing change, even if it is subtle, even if it is the smallest increment. And so when we're in a pattern of depression or anxiety or fear, or any kind of pattern that is really familiar but painful, that it's profoundly important to cultivate the willingness and recognition of change, even in its subtlety, because then we can cultivate a belief that the transformation is happening. versus saying nothing's changed. I'm not seeing any difference. It's easy not to see any difference because what are we looking for? We're looking for the obvious familiar. And it's so familiar that it's often difficult. It takes effort to recognize the subtleties of change that can occur. And it's interesting because the core connection work is sort of, in its way, it's a guided visualization. And one of the big questions that I ask in the context of the core connection work is what's different? What's different? And the thing is that sometimes people don't notice that there's something different. They'll say, well, it's pretty much the same. And when someone says, well, it's pretty much the same, my question is, well, you said it's pretty much the same. So that means that there's something different, even though it might be really subtle. What do you notice that's different? And more times than not, they come back with noticing that something's different. And I think that this is the case with ourselves, with change in our own experience, is we tend to say, no, nothing's changed. It's the same. For instance, when we do a lot of work on something and then life occurs and it comes back around and we're faced with what looks like the same thing that hasn't changed. And what I say to people is we're on a spiral of change. It can't not be different because you're different. It can't be the same because this isn't the same moment. And so we're evolving in this spiral where we get to keep revisiting nuances, aspects, dimensions of something that feels very familiar. And it takes effort to get to notice that something's different. So Jenny says, constant persistence, baby steps forward, 2 baby, and shuffle 3, back 2 baby steps forward, keep going, you will get somewhere. Exactly, Jenny, exactly. And I think part of what I am asserting today is that as we notice that we've actually made progress, it may enable those steps to become bigger. You know, as we notice that we've made progress, it can feed our confidence that indeed this thing that seemed immovable is now moving. Indeed, this thing we thought was intractable is now more pliant, is now shifting. And the more we notice that something is shifting, the more it can shift. The noticing of its shifting helps to affirm it in a way that it strengthens it and allows it to perhaps accelerate in its transformation. And what I've noticed with the client I mentioned with the anxiety is that they are very stubbornly focused, like not recognizing the change until we have conversations to say, well, look what's changed. Because in recognizing what's changed, there's a hopefulness that then feeds the progress. So Jenny says life is constantly evolving, but you have to control, you have the control by choosing whether the spiraling is up or down. Yeah, I think it doesn't always feel that way, but I'm inclined to agree with you, Jenny. And Jenny says that the client is digging their heels in, to say, no, I'm not changing. No, it's all the same. even though it isn't. Yeah, I have another client who is experiencing a lot of anxiety and is really, really intent on not changing, and not consciously. Consciously, they want release from this more than anything, but they're absolutely refusing to switch their attention to what works from what doesn't work. And again, where we put our attention is where we put our energy. Jenny says that's suffering. Yes, exactly. That's suffering. It is. And it's the recipe, like we can create all different being states for ourselves. And it was so interesting because for this other person, we were able to point out to them that Jenny says, and miserable. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Like we can reinforce our misery all the time. Or we can say, you know what? Yeah, I'm miserable. Maybe I'm less miserable than I was yesterday. Or, I have a feeling, maybe there's a tiny little bit of lightness that I didn't feel before. And so what would happen with this one client is they would say, yep, but I'm still miserable. And invalidate the change. And I think that in this process of transformation, the recognition is so important. The recognition is a big part of the healing, because along with the recognition that something has changed is the recognition and acknowledgement that the whole circumstance can change, that the whole experience can change, and in fact is in the process of changing. And so we've talked about manifesting and experiencing the having of the desire, of the desired state. And we can experience those desired states regardless of the circumstances. And as we create the experience of the desired state, that is amplifying our capacity. It's building a capacity to experience the desired state, right? Which is a pretty cool thing. So Jenny says you can lead a horse to water, but they can choose not to drink. You can change them. You can't change them. You can only guide them. It's true. It's true. And there's, like I've had my cat sometimes doesn't eat. And so there are ways that I have developed to try to convince her, to cajole her, to entice her. And ultimately it's on her whether she eats or not, right? And that's the same with people that are in the process. Jenny says you can't change them, they have to do the work. Well, so what's interesting to me is this one person is doing all kinds of work, but the thing that is missing is they're allowing themselves to revel in their progress. Actually, that's both of them that I was mentioning, that they're not allowing themselves to acknowledge and celebrate the progress that they've made. And I think that that's really important, not to rest on our laurels, but to celebrate the progress that we've made, because it allows us recognition that we are in fact making progress and that it is possible to change. Because if when we're going back and saying, well, it's still here, nothing's changed, we're reaffirming the persistence of that condition over and over and over again, which has the effect of making supporting that condition in persisting, right? It's very frustrating to witness the deep commitment that some people have to their suffering. It's frustrating and painful to see people have the life the life preserver be right there for them, right there, like bumping into them, and not able or not aware enough to just reach out for it. Jenny says no movement. Yeah, it's frustrating. The thing is that there's always movement. There's always movement. It could be back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It could be up and down, sideways, but there's always movement. It's just that sometimes it's subtle and it's not always in the direction we want it to go, but there's always movement. And if we can capture the momentum of that movement, then we can utilize it. So Jenny says they're staying stuck and wasting their time not getting out of that. And I'm not sure what the last thing is you said, Jenny, but the thing is that the persistence, we have these patterns of belief and deep, deep, deep conviction in some cases about beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about our way of being, beliefs about how the world is. And we will defend those beliefs and support those beliefs to our detriment, often because they're comfortable, they're familiar. And the fear of the change is way greater. The fear of the unknown is way greater than what one client calls his favorite miserable. Like the favorite miserable is something that's very familiar. And Jenny says not getting the results they're wanting, and also believing that they'll never get the results they want, so that any results that they get, they're not recognizing. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here joining us this morning. We're talking about kind of the dark side of persistence and this. I love that. Jenny says, impossible is I'm possible. And it's true. It's true. When we can allow ourselves to recognize, and this is the big tough part sometimes, that reality is fluid, that our experience is fluid and dynamic, that change is always occurring, even if it's occurring on a subtle level, that if we could harness that momentum, we could create transformation for ourselves. And it's exactly, Jenny says, perception shift. That is what it is. It's all about perception shift. Our experience of the world is all about perception, because the world that each of us experiences is not the real world with a capital R. It's our interpretations of it. It's our sense interpretations and synthesis of information. It's our mental processing of information. It's our physiological sensations of our experience and then our interpretation of those sensations. You know, we might have a sense of thrumming energy through our bodies, and we could be interpreting it as there's something terribly wrong, or we could be interpreting it as, oh, that's vital life force. You know, it's the same sensation, but our interpretation is going to create a different response within ourselves. If I feel like there's, oh my gosh, there's something terribly wrong, it's going to create stress, anxiety. I get to create all that stuff. And a shift of perception to, wow, I'm just really attuned to the movement of energy in my body. That's a different perception, right? Even the perception of pain is, or defining it as pain, is a perception. And when we can be present to the sensation without putting it in a box of pain, the experience is different. So Jenny says, practice affirmations that can create their intention and say it out loud 3 times a day. 3 times a day. So the thing about affirmations that I discovered is you have to actually have emotion connected to them for them to be effective. For years I would say affirmations, but if you just repeat them, if it's just routine, if it's not part of an emotional experience, it's just empty words, because the emotion is what actually gives the power to that experience. Rosalind says the opposite of persistence, changing perspectives can achieve the same outcome using a different approach, starting with the outcome and then reverse engineering. That's a great idea. It's like, what's the desired outcome? And what would be my most desirable state to who can I be to support the evolution of that outcome? So asking valuable questions, asking the right questions, empowering questions is really an important skill. And Jenny says, yes, that way they create and say it with enthusiasm. So whatever the affirmation is, if we can cultivate the experience of being in that state, already receiving what it is that we're desiring, that we're affirming, if we can presence that state and be in that state and affirm it, that's when we are really truly empowering that affirmation. And Rosalind says, combined with EFT tapping. EFT tapping is really powerful, and it's powerful to move us out of certain states that we might be feeling like we're in a loop of. I remember there was a period of time where I was just constantly tapping all the time. And it really helped. It really helped. So if you're interested in EFT tapping, you can look that up, EFT tapping. You can also look up, I think it's called the Tapping Solution. There's a big company that does all kinds of stuff with tapping, and they have a lot of free resources and meditations available too. So I think that's it for this morning, folks. We were talking about how persistence isn't always working in our favor. We get to look at shifting our commitment. Jenny says, I did 1 year ago. Mine was that I was the best pizza delivery chick and money flowed to me with ease. That's awesome, Jenny. Love it. Love it. Anyway, I'm Mira Rubin. This is The Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And it's such a pleasure and privilege to be with you. And until next time, so, so, so much love.